That's awesome. So again, how many people heard us on the radio yesterday with Dave Michaels? That was so much fun. I had such a blast talking about I was amazed at how many people heard of Kalinga. Anybody here heard of Kalinga?
Oh, yeah.
Well, that's why you're here, just because of Kalinga?
Yeah, what is
I did a lot of motorcycling down that area.
Did you?
Dirt biking.
Wow, well, I see.
Clear
You've
Creek
got
and that area.
What's the creek?
Clear Creek.
Oh, Clear Creek, yeah, there's those.
I thought it was the earthquake in Kalinga that put it on the map.
You know, I'll tell you guys a funny story. I didn't tell this online last night. So my grandpa lived in Kalinga from 1910 to when he died in 1980. He was born in 1883, so he was 97 years old. But he had passed away by the time the earthquake happened. But I just happened to be sitting in front of a swimming pool down in Santa Cruz, and this girlfriend and I were calling it quits. And I swear, the moment we did it, the earthquake hit, the water was jumping out of the pool. It was amazing. So I just figured my grandpa was going, yeah, this is the right thing to do. And I've now been married 25 years and I have 3 kids. So I guess it was right? Anyway, so that's not why we're here. So we're here to talk about autoimmune disease, weight loss, resistance, and cellular healing or cellular health. Carol, did you get those things going?
Yeah, you're
Okay,
live.
good. Okay, cool. So I'm going to go through some information here to begin with, and then I'm going to really try to give you guys some take-home information that you can start with right away. But I do have a little bit of information here on this, the end of this here photograph needle. Okay, let's start this up. Slideshow. Start. Good. Okay, so a lot of times we start things and then we never carry through with them. Yeah, you might want to move over here, I'm sorry. So, you know, really, it's kind of interesting, like 97% of the people don't act, 3% of the people do act. A lot of people are spectators. So I hope tonight I give you something to act on, something that at least you can take home and start doing. You know, it's kind of interesting when I was talking about history last night, but how many of you know what percentage of the colony people actually fought in the Revolutionary War? What percent of the guys that were living in the colonies fought in the Revolutionary War?
3%.
You're right. It's actually 4%.
Oh, okay.
But
So
isn't that
three of
amazing?
them.
So 4% of the people that were living under British rule decided that they wanted to put their lives and everything that they had at stake to make a better world for everybody. And so that's kind of an interesting thing. It seems to be going down that way. So hopefully tonight I will tell you something that makes you decide to make a decision to do something along the line. So what I want to talk about is chronic disease. And because chronic disease is plaguing our country. I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but the United States has only 4% of the world population. We take 50% of the medications made in the world, and we're rated 50th in the world for health. Now, that's not my statistic. That's the World Health Organization's statistic. So if we're taking 50% of the drugs, and we're only 4%, and we're still rated 50th, either something isn't working, or it's working really well, depending on what side of the aisle you're on. So our goal here at McCollum Family Chiropractic is to try to provide information that's going to help you make better decisions and then give you some really practical ways to do it. So what's really interesting is all of these different symptoms up here have a cause. And are you able to see through me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, good. I'll try to move back and forth. But all of these different symptoms have a certain cause, and if you really get to the really root of the problem, more likely most of them are going to improve. Or you could medicate each one of them and still not have gotten to the root of the problem. So that's kind of what we're going to talk about. Really, we know that we live in a toxic world. So I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but heavy metals, for instance, heavy metals is really being discovered to be at the root of a lot of our disease. And what you may or may not know is, how many generations do we know heavy metals come through our mothers? Anybody remember from last night? 4 generations. So heavy metals like lead and mercury, various other heavy metals that we pick up from our environment or our work or the food or wherever we're living, are transferred through mother's blood into the baby. And then that baby is born with a certain amount of heavy metals and toxins already. And what really what this relates to, if you take a look at, we were all born with a certain size bucket. And that bucket is filled up with toxins that we know we've got from mother. Now this is kind of the key to this whole thing. So if somebody just happened to be born with this size bucket, and then all of a sudden with that much heavy metals, we know that there's 278 chemicals that have been found in the mother's umbilical blood that have been transferred into the baby, according to the Work Health. I forget the name of the thing right now, but I'll think of it in a minute because I'm going to talk about brain fog. No, not the World Health Organization.
CDC.
It's a work group, but I'll remember in a minute. But anyway, so now you come into life, and you may or may not be subjected to environmental toxins. Perhaps you get just a bunch of different types of immunizations. Perhaps you're born into an environment that's not very healthy. So everybody gets this. Now you end up eating bad food. Maybe you eat a lot of sugar. Maybe you're eating processed food. We know that the FDA allows over 3,000 food additives and preservatives into our food, and those things start to add up too. So you get the idea who's going to get sick first here. Anybody?
Small bucket.
Yeah, this person is going to get sick. Now that's a genetic thing. We're born with a different size buckets. And based on what our mother's putting down into us, it could allow us to get sick quicker. The bottom line is, this is going to turn on genetic diseases, and that's what we're going to be talking about with a little more detail here. So cellular inflammation is really the key to what all of the major scientists are discovering to be the cause of chronic disease. This is, Time Magazine and World Health. They're saying when you get inflammation in your arteries, it causes arterial disease and can lead to heart attack. It can cause stroke. It can cause cancers. It can cause just about every type of arthritis there is out there. So we're going to talk about where this comes from and what we can actually do about it. Really comes down to the cell. And so our cell, I don't know if we have 80 quadrillion cells or something like that. They're always changing the number. But we've got actually more bacteria in our body than we have human cells. As everybody's heard that by now, right? We've got these, anybody not heard the term microbiome? If you haven't, you know what bacteria are? Acidophilus and bifidus, it's in our gut. That stuff has got a new cool term called microbiome. And it's now one of the major things that even Western medicine is starting to study this. But the people that are really studying it are the guys at MIT. Some of the top brains in the world are really looking into these bugs in our gut and in our mouth that are making us healthy or making us sick. So it's interesting, in the old days we used to take antibiotics, and did a medical doctor ever tell you to take acidophilus after that? No. Now they're telling you to a little bit, right, now and then. And we think we take it for a week and we're fixing the problem. But what we're finding is the average child has had at least 17 doses of antibiotics by the time they're 17 years old. And those antibiotics are wiping out all of the good bacteria and all the bad bacteria. It's like, it just cleans the slate. And this is allowing bad bacteria to grow. What really drives me crazy is when people come in with a clear virus, the sniffles, no fever, and they go to the doctor and they say, well, they gave me amoxicillin. That's an antibiotic. Antibiotics don't kill viruses, but I think that these medical doctors are under so much stress They're just trying to do something to help people. So we really want to talk about the cell and what goes wrong in the cell. So the cell is, I'm going to make a drawing here. I'm going to take my, that looks like a pretty good drink, doesn't it? Bahamas somewhere. But so if we take a look at a cell, a human cell, the cell wall is actually what we know to be one of the most intelligent parts of our body is the cell wall. We've got 80 quadrillion cells. It's basically made up of 2 layers of oil, one here, with water in between. And this, for instance, there's a little power plant inside our cell. It's basically just like a car. Every cell in our body is like a car. You have the body, and then you've got the carburetor and the engine that gives the energy. So everybody knows what insulin is, right? Insulin, people with diabetes problems have an insulin problem. Okay, now diabetes is really at least 50% of the people in the United States are either pre-diabetic or diabetic. It's a huge epidemic. It's affecting 50% of our population. And I'm going to show you what causes it, and you can see, maybe you'll decide there's a good way to solve it. But what normally happens is insulin is a hormone, right? Comes out of our pancreas. Insulin opens the door on our cell and lets sugar in. So sugar comes from protein and carbohydrates. A lot of people don't know that meat breaks down into sugar in our body and our cells and is burned as sugar, but it does. So you have protein and carbohydrates. Now carbohydrates is everything that's not protein or fat. So it's from potato chips to broccoli, to Brussels sprouts, to potatoes. That's all carbohydrates. It all breaks down into sugar. So now what we know is when our cells get damaged or they get inflamed from all of the environmental toxins, and we've got plenty of them. We already talked about the fact that mercury and lead comes down through our mother, let alone what we get. But when you start to get a bucket that's already full, basically your blood is running dirty. And as an example, if I had a bucket here with a sponge in it, and I was trying to wash the walls, and I kept putting that sponge in that water, and I never changed the water, pretty soon I'd be washing the walls with dirty water, and it would never get clean. So that sponge represents a huge filter in your body called the liver. Your liver's primary job is to clean the toxins out of your blood and get it out of your body through your large intestine. Now our livers have been so stressed out from all the chemicals, from the heavy metals, from the antibiotics, medications we've taken in our lifetime, and then from a lot of us are allergic to gluten, and gluten has been altered. Gluten is from wheat, various grains. It's been so altered in our country that it's nowhere near what was originally on this planet, and our bodies can't digest it very well. So now our liver is toxic, and what ends up happening is, just like your car, if you never change your oil or you never change your oil filter, pretty soon the oil is going to be so bad that it's damaging to the car, right? So what happens is, so we eat food. Here's our stomach, let's say. Food goes in our stomach. That gets into our intestines. Our intestines, with those little bugs in there called microbiome, they break down our food for us. We don't break it down. The microbiome digests that food and then delivers it into our body through our gut so that we can sustain life. So foods get broken down in here, and then they come out into our body from the intestine, which is not our body. The intestine is a tube through us. It's not considered internal. It's external to the body itself. It's made of the same thing that your skin is, called exoderm, outside derm. So if I stacked a bunch of donuts up here, and right through the center is a hole, but that inside of the donut hole is the same material, right, as the whole donut covering, you can see that that's what our intestines are. We want to not, there's so much stuff that goes through our gut we don't want in our body, and there's a protective mechanism to keep it there. But when those get broken down because of toxins, heavy metals, molds, chemicals, glyphosate, which is really dangerous, and we'll talk about that if we need to. Drugs, they break apart these junctions in our cell, and big particles, big bad guys that look like this get in our body, and they start to inflame the cells. Just like if you got poison oak. Anybody here had poison oak before?
Oh, yeah.
Anybody had poison oak so bad that your eyes swell shut, besides me? A couple of us? Okay, so I have poison oak, I can't see. I still have eyes, but I just can't see, and I'm miserable, right? So when our body gets swollen like this, and the organs get swollen, the cells can't work right, and you feel miserable, okay? That's the same thing. If I were to take turpentine and start washing paint off of my hand, and I just kept rubbing turpentine on my hand, pretty soon my hand's going to be raw, right? Does that make sense? When we get these chemicals in our body from our environment and from the foods, really, I keep going back to heavy metals because I'm going to make a point in a minute. The cells themselves get toxic, and we just saw that even some of the biggest magazines in the world are saying, from the doctors that are on the top, inflammation is causing heart disease, cancers, and Alzheimer's disease, and other diseases. So we know what's causing inflammation. If we can reduce the inflammation, the body can get better, can get healthier, and we can help it from turning on bad genetic diseases, okay? So getting back to this example, now we have kind of a swollen cell wall. It's got poison oak. So rather than one insulin being able to open that door, it's like the cell wall door becomes like a rusty sliding glass door. You know, pretty soon it sticks, and one insulin can't open it to let the sugar in. And so it requires more insulin. So your pancreas is pumping out this hormone called insulin. And finally, that sugar gets let in. It gets to this power plant called the mitochondria. It makes energy. And you go, oh, thank God, that was hard. Do I have to do this every day just to feel like I can wake up in the morning? Yeah. Now, the whole trick to this is, when energy is made in your car, what comes out the exhaust pipe? Exhaust. So that's toxic. So we have toxins coming out of this power plant in our body. Those toxins have to get out of our cell. Now, if it's hard to get this stuff in the cell, do you think it's hard to get the stuff out of the cell? So what we know that's happening is the toxins are building up inside the cells, and that's killing the mitochondria, which are our power plants. Your heart is 70% of your heart cells are mitochondria. So 70% of your heart has these guys in there. Pretty crazy, right? And when you take cholesterol medication, what does it do to the mitochondria? It kills it, because it kills the coenzyme Q10. It wipes out something called coenzyme Q10, and the coenzyme Q10 is vital for the mitochondria to live. So kind of getting into some of those drugs, why we're taking 50% of the drugs in the world as we go through this. So what happens when your pancreas is pumping out as much insulin as it possibly can, and you're still got too much sugar in your blood? What happens?
There's no place to go.
Exactly. So what happens when you get too much sugar in your blood? Yeah, what else? What do they call that? Diabetes. So when you go to the doctor and your body's pumping out as much insulin as it possibly can, and they say you don't have enough insulin, your sugar, too much sugar in your blood's going to kill you, because it's going to make all your blood cells sticky. They'll all stick together, and then your arteries will clog, and you'll have a heart attack, right, or a stroke. That's how diabetes is the #1 cause of heart disease, stroke, preventable blindness, kidney damage, and cancer, right? So what does the doctor give you to help? Since you can't make any more insulin, what's the doctor give you? More insulin. So now you've got more insulin, but it's a pharmaceutical grade insulin pushing that sugar molecule in the cell. Great, that's awesome. It's a solution. But I have a question for you. If insulin can't get in the cell, how about estrogen? Do you think estrogen's going to be able to get into that cell wall? Is it completely impermeable? I mean, impervious to the fact that the cell wall's swollen? Just because this insulin can't get into a swollen cell, do you think estrogen's going to get into a swollen cell? Yeah, no. Probably not. How about progesterone, another female hormone? How about testosterone? How about thyroid hormone? So nothing can get in there. So see, the beauty is, if you get a swollen cell and you're pre-diabetic and they want to give you a diabetic medication, guess what else they need to give you? Thyroid medication, because it can't get in the cell. It's like to hit it with both barrels of a shotgun and see if it can get in the cell. Now the problem is all of those medications are making the liver even more toxic, and then the liver starts to break down itself, and you get more disease. Now, this is going to really, I hope this makes a point for you. So you guys understand you have too much insulin in your blood here, right? This is a process that's actually plaguing almost half of our country. We're in the process of calling hyperinsulinemia. Hyper means what? High or low? Insulin, and then anemia means blood. So what does hyperinsulinemia mean?
Too much insulin in your blood.
Too much insulin in blood. So that's the step before diabetes. Guess what? Diabetes type 3. Anybody heard of diabetes type 3? It's called insulin on the brain. You know another word for that? Alzheimer's. Okay? So Alzheimer's disease is being caused primarily from, one of the big causes of it is from too much insulin in your blood. Now, aren't they promoting insulin in your blood by giving you insulin for diabetes? So what's happening down the road? What ends up happening is the insulin gets into the thing called the blood-brain barrier, and it lays down something called plaque, like plaque on your teeth. Now it's a protein plaque called amyloid plaque, and that's one of the major causes of dementia and now Alzheimer's. It's called diabetes type 3. Just look it up when you get home. It's pretty crazy. So the treatment for diabetes is actually promoting the cause of dementia. We now know all of the major places like the Mayo Clinic, MIT, and all these guys are now saying that any kind of anti-inflammatory medication is linked to Alzheimer's disease. Because when we realize that inflammation is the cause of disease, and if we never fix the inflammation but we just treat it with medication, we're just promoting this problem. They say by 2050, 1/2 of us will have Alzheimer's. Right. Crazy, right? I'm trying to remember. I think that's what you said. Not sure. But so I just want to paint the picture because we do have a really practical solution to this, but it's multifaceted, but none of it is hard. Okay? But you guys get kind of any questions on this? So what we're talking about is the chronic cause of disease, the silent killer, the surprising link between inflammation, heart attacks, cancer, Alzheimer's disease, and all that other kind of stuff. They're talking about, autism and all that as well. So we want to take a look and see what's causing the inflammation. Yeah.
I have a question, which is, does aluminum also have a role in the...
Aluminum?
Yeah.
Yeah, it does. It's a heavy metal. Aluminum, we get it in our underarm deodorant. We get it in cooking with aluminum cookware.
Soft drinks.
Yeah, soft drinks. It's really terrible. And the stuff that they're putting in the soft drinks, especially aspartame, which is the diet stuff, it's got formaldehyde in it. I mean, it's not a good thing. And guess what we've discovered, the guys at MIT have discovered, when you drink something that tastes sweet, but doesn't have any sweetness, that sweet taste still turns on the same mechanism as something sweet. It makes you think that you're turning on sweet, so it can make insulin come into the body anyway. Pretty crazy.
Wow.
Yeah, kind of crazy, huh? So there is really not a lot of shortcuts. Most of us are of the similar generation where we've seen so much technology go so fast that we haven't had a chance to stop and see what kind of effect it has. And since a lot of you heard my talk last night, I was walking with my grandpa in Kalinga in 1970. He was like 87 and I was 10 or something like that, maybe a little older than that. I was 15. And we're walking and he got hit by a car at 80, broke both legs because a little girl got hit and he ran up to try to help her. But he survived till he was 97. So he's walking along and a plane went overhead and he stopped me, and he grabbed me, and he looked up. He took a deep breath and he goes, always take deep breaths all the way down to the bottom of your lungs. We want to get rid of that bad air. And he looks up and goes, I was born in 1883. I came from a buggy whip to the Wright brothers flying. I got to fly to Europe. I've been in an airplane, and now a man landed on the moon in his lifetime. Pretty crazy. But in our little lifetime, who knows what's happening? We're going to be able to go, beam me up, Scotty, before we're done, right?
We wish.
Yeah. So, anyway, the human cell, this is all we are. This is our life. Now, there's whether you believe you're a spiritual being or just a bunch of chemicals, it's the same thing. This is what's sustaining life. So if this cell wall's damaged, all these guys in here are going to be damaged, and you're not going to do very well. And what's going on is the genes are in here. So the DNA is in the nucleus, and all of the genetic factors that make my eyes blue, my hair blonde, give me 5 fingers. The same genes, there's similar genes that actually give you Alzheimer's disease, 7 that we know of. There's breast cancer genes, prostate cancer, colon cancer genes that if they don't ever turn on your whole life, you're never going to get it. If you were lucky enough to have a bucket like this, if you just came into life with this bucket, like my mother-in-law, who's 97 years old, she gets adjusted once a week here. Some of you probably met her who've come to some of my other talks. She's not on one medication. 97 years old. She was a captain in the WAC, World War II, tough as nails. Her dad was an Army colonel, just tough people. She's not going to get sick. She'll outlive me, probably. I hope, well, you know what, quite honestly, every time I go home, she's got a list for me to do. It's longer than my wife's list. But,
So you don't go home anymore.
no, I tell her that pothole at the bottom of the driveway, that's at the bottom of the list, Beth, so just deal with it.
Oh my God.
But, so if we are lucky enough to be like this, we're probably not going to get sick. If we are here, we got to do something about it. We want to start to empty the bucket, and that's what we're talking about tonight. If you want to live healthy, we got to learn how to empty these buckets. Which way does this go? Okay. We talked about the cell. So, does everybody know about glyphosate? A little bit about Roundup?
Yep.
Roundup comes from Ancient Orange. Okay, it's a bad chemical they used in Vietnam, probably earlier. But it's actually sprayed so liberally. But what we know, the scientists, and there's a doctor from MIT, the head of one of the MIT studies, named Dr. Sinnott, who has studied this stuff inside out. She took it to the Senate committee and showed them that every single graph goes up of every disease to the degree glyphosate was used. And what it does is it breaks apart the tight junctions in your gut. So we have this lining in our gut that's like a sieve, and it's very fine. Only like tiny things are supposed to get through those sieves. But if you took a screwdriver and did this to the sieve, you're going to get boulders and rocks and things coming through that tube into your body, into your bloodstream that should never be there. So that's what glyphosate is doing. And it also breaks down this barrier in our brain called the blood-brain barrier. So there's ways to turn that around, and we know how to do that. That's part of what we have to do. At the end of this talk, I'm going to go into solutions. I'm just trying to give you guys information so you know what to stay away from. They spray our fields liberally with this now. The wheat fields and the grain fields, they're spraying it with glyphosate because it dries up the green leaves quicker so that they can get the grain faster. Don't take my word for it, just look it up. And remember that song that had the amber waves of grain in it?
Yeah.
America, It's now stubby stalks of wheat. The reason why is in 1970, a doctor who won the Nobel Prize for this in Mexico City was trying to end world hunger. So he altered, this was before genetic engineering, but he altered wheat till it got 7 times the yield of normal wheat. And it was an awesome thing. The only problem is our bodies could not figure out how to digest that gluten very well. Some of us can eat it and have no problems. Other of us bloat. It causes inflammation in the body. It causes arthritis. We don't know why. We don't understand it, but we do. So that's our current gluten in this country. If you go to Europe, they don't have that gluten. They have the old world gluten. You can eat that stuff over there and not have the problems that we have. Coupled with that, they've now sprayed it with glyphosate, which breaks down our blood-brain barrier and our gut barrier. And not only that, but remember I was talking about the microbiome, those little bugs in our gut? These guys have adapted a certain gene that they put into the grain. Monsanto is so clever, they altered a gene in wheat to be its own antimicrobial. So when they sprayed that grain with glyphosate, it was immune to the glyphosate, so they could use more glyphosate on it. Our microbiome has developed and it's making its own antibacterial, or what are these things? The pesticide in our gut. Our own stuff is doing that. Pretty crazy.
Is
So-
that true for organic wheat, even organic wheat here in the United
Well,
States?
as long as it's old world wheat. Old world wheat. You know, there is no organic wheat. I mean, you can find some. There are some. And, you know, but it's really hard to find. And if you have a disease, if you have a condition that you're trying to handle, from any kind of autoimmune disease, inflammatory, or you're trying to lose weight, or you're trying to deal with some kind of the C word stuff, then you definitely want to be away from all grains because it's inflammatory. And we'll talk about that. Then we have mercury, right? Now, we know that we live in one of the biggest mercury mine areas in the world, right? That's why we have the San Jose Mercury News. So there's mercury mines over there they don't even know where they are anymore because they're on private property. So the amount of mercury in the water and in that area is really high. But we even know that, you know, the krill eaten by all the way up the food chain, we start to get higher and higher mercury levels into our body. And anybody here like to fish? Just me? I'm going fishing next week. All right. All catch and release. But any lake in California, if you go to Outdoor World and pick up the fishing game guide, it will tell you every lake is labeled how many fish a woman in childbearing years can eat. It's usually one fish a week. So, you know, it's okay for the guys to eat the fish, but the women in childbearing, and actually they limit for guys too, like, you know, Lake Almanor, you should have maybe eat fish 3 times a week if you're a guy, once if you're a woman. Because we know the mercury is toxic. We know that it damages the nerve cells. And it's, you know, it also, every time, there's like these little dark pockets. Let's say, I'm just going to pretend that's a dark pocket, kind of a hidden part of our body that is not easy for white blood cells to get to. Heavy metals hang out here, and they invite viruses, molds, bacteria, and things like spirochetes, which is Lyme disease. So all these things hide in these dark pockets, which is the right environment made by heavy metals. So heavy metals get into our brain. They love fat. Our brain's made of fat. These heavy metals are getting into our brain, and we know that the glyphosate's driving it heavier, farther and farther in our brain. In order for us to get healthy, we've got to allow our brain to function well. So we've got to get the heavy metals and toxins out of there. And there's a process to do that. This is kind of an interesting box. I was my sister lives in LA, and I was eating waffles down there. She was asleep. And I said, it's a nice, cool box of waffles. I started reading the back and the side, and it had some really great stuff. No synthetic pesticides, no synthetic herbicides, preservatives or additives, no genetically engineered seeds, no irradiation. I'm going, man, this is awesome. But then the next line said, no sewage sludge on fields.
Wow.
I choked on my waffle.
Wow.
Right here, no sewage sludge on fields. See that? You go buy this now, that line's not on there.
Ooh.
So one of two things happened. They either got in a lot of trouble or they started putting sewage sludge on the fields. I don't know which one. Neither one sounds great. But my point is, you know, consumer beware. They have to get rid of that stuff somehow. And and that's an organic food that's telling us that we're so organic we don't even allow regurgitated, you know, sewer plants on our fields. So that's just a point. So this is an example of a leaky gut, you know, or a leaky cell. So if this is a cell, and these are all receptor sites. Every cell in your body every cell has 40 million receptor sites for estrogen alone. On one cell, 40 million. How can that possibly be? I don't know, but it is, according to the person who counted them all.
Yeah.
So this one is an estrogen receptor. This one's a progesterone receptor. This one's testosterone or insulin, and this one puts in only vitamin D. You guys get the point? So when these cell walls get swollen, they look like this, figuratively speaking, and they can't get in the cell. That's an example of this diagram I pointed out to you. Not only that, but these toxins start to just eat away the receptors. They dissolve them, just like if you put, you know, turpentine on a plant. It's going to dissolve the plant and damage the receptor, sometimes even beyond help. Now the good news is, guess what? Cells replace themselves. Your heart cells last for 90 days. Boom, 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 gone. New heart cell. Stomach cells last for 5 days. So every 5 days you're getting a whole new lining to your stomach. Muscle cells last 120 days. So if you're getting new cells all the time, how come do we still have these diseases? So that's an interesting question. Glad I asked it. Which you guys probably are too. You knew this was the question you were waiting for, right? So when we're young and healthy, we have cells that are tens, and as those cells divide, they make new 10 cells. But then maybe we are in a place where we get exposed to different types of bacteria. We maybe, whether or not the jury's still out on vaccines, maybe we get viruses, maybe we get poison,
Radiation?
Yeah, radiation, anything that happens, but pretty soon these cells get damaged, and 10 cells become 9s. 9 cells might make 9s till the next disease. Pretty soon you have 4 cells making 4 cells. This is when our immune system is weak. This is when our body the resistance is down. This is when we get sick, and whatever gene, remember the genes in your body, they're like a light switch, on, off. There's something like 2,500 genes in each cell or something. So you want the genes turned on for blue eyes, red eyes, no, not red eyes, that's something I did in the 60s, that's different. But blue eyes, brown eyes, blonde hair, 5 fingers, all that kind of stuff, right? But you don't want the one to switch on for colon cancer, or breast cancer, or rheumatoid arthritis, or multiple sclerosis. All of these are diseases that we know are genetic, turned on by unhealthy toxins inside the cells. That makes sense to you? So as these cells get weaker and weaker, the chance of the survival is pretty bad. So what we need to do is we need to, number one, and get rid of the weak cells so that we start to make healthier cells. And there's a gentleman named Yoshinori Ohsumi. It took me about 4 months to learn how to say that somewhat okay. Yoshinori Ohsumi won the Nobel Prize in 2016. That's only 2 years ago. So he won the Nobel Prize in 2016 for a term called autophagy. Auto means self, right? Phagy means to eat. Self-eating. So he found out that under moments of, when the body is under stress, it's going to eat itself. Self-eating. But what he also discovered is, like, we used to think, if you don't eat, you're going to break down, it's harmful for your body, right? Didn't we all kind of grow up that way, thinking you had to eat 3 squares a day? And right now, how many meals are we supposed to eat if we have diabetes? 6. Completely wrong, completely mess it up, and I'll prove it to you in a minute. So, but autophagy means self-eating. So what Dr. Ohsumi discovered is, under times of stress, the body's going to eat the weakest cells first. It's going to spare the healthy cells, wherever those are. It's going to spare these cells and eat these ones first. And then it's going to take all that broken down material, take it to a recycling plant, and make brand new, good, healthy cells out of it. In fact, it goes a step further. This guy, Dr. Longo, from MIT discovered that under times of stress, which Dr. Asumi also talked about, 30 hours of stressing the body, it's going to make its own new stem cells. Now, we've all heard of stem cell therapy. What if your body could make its own stem cells? Well, it can. Dr. Longo at MIT has proven it. And then another gentleman is he's a nephrologist, Dr. Jason Fung, said if you fast, if you stop eating and give your body a break now and then, it's going to actually start to help your stem cells produce more too. So they know that after 30 hours of not eating, and I'm not recommending any of you do this until you've maybe worked up to it, 30 hours of not eating, your body's going to start pouring out stem cells. And then if you go a few more days, you're going to have so many stem cells in your body that it's going to go, there's like the carpenter, they're going to go around and fix everything. Carol, who's my assistant here, she used to work for one of the first cardiac stem cell doctors in the country, well, a company. They had to work in the Cayman Islands because they were, the United States didn't want them working here. But they would take these people that could afford to go to the Cayman Islands and spend all this money on stem cells to be injected into the heart to fix the heart attack. What they discovered early on is they would put all these stem cells up the same artery when they do the stent. They couldn't find the stem cells. What happened to the stem cells? They're supposed to go fix the left ventricle. We wrote left ventricle in the heart on the stem cell, and they're gone. What they did, they found them in the arteries around the heart because they said, no, this is more important. So the stem cells are so smart, they know where to go. So it's pretty cool. So what we're discovering now at this point is the ability to help our body break down the bad weak cells and start to create new cells. Does that sound interesting? It's like the fountain of youth. Now, I work with a guy named Dr. Daniel Pompa, who's the leading authority of cellular rehabilitation and getting rid of the cell inflammation. His battle cry is fix a cell to get well. Get rid of the chronic inflammation in the cell, fix it so it can actually, one insulin can open the door again for there and get that thing healthy again. Your body knows what to do. The bad genes aren't going to be flipped on. The bad genes, your body's going to start to be smart and do what it's supposed to do. It's smarter than all of us anyway. One way that what I wanted to talk, I forgot to mention, but when you're getting sugar into the mitochondria and it's making energy and you're spitting out gas or toxic exhaust and it can't get out of the cell, it should get out of the cell, go into the intestines and kidneys and out of your body. But when this is all swollen, it's like driving down the road with a hose in your exhaust pipe coming into your window and just driving along with the exhaust blowing into your car. That's what it's like when your body is inflamed and you're driving through life with these toxins in your body making you sick. You're going to feel it. It's going to make you feel lousy. You're going to start to get chronic diseases, and if you don't catch them quick enough, they can turn into some things that could actually be very, very dangerous for you. So you could go one way and go join the people standing in line trying to get all the medications, or you could go, the other way, and that is to start to learn how to turn your body around. And that's what the top scientists in the world are telling us right now. Pretty cool. So autophagy. So again, 2016 Nobel Prize, pretty bright guy, found out that when we put the body under moments of stress, we can get the body to break down the weak cells and make healthy cells. If we do that long enough, which is what Dr. Walter Longo said, we're going to make stem cells, the body will start to repair itself. I can give you an example. I hurt my shoulder at the county fair last year, tearing something down. I hurt my shoulder, you remember that. I was adjusting with this arm the whole time. And I was trying to get new doctors, and I had this little Oriental girl about this big trying to adjust people, and it was like, she's the only person that could help, but I couldn't lift my arm.
Yeah.
So I was getting adjusted by her and some other people. I was using some essential oils that helped a lot, but I did a 5-day water fast because Dr. Pompa had told me all about this, and I'd been studying. I'd been going to the seminar studying under all these people. with it, and he goes, look, if you do a water fast, your body's going to starve off. It's going to eat all the damaged tissue because of autophagy. And about 6 weeks later, your muscles are going to be stronger than they ever were. 6 weeks later, my arm was better than it was before I hurt it, because I've been adjusting for 30 years, so it's hard on the body. But that was just proving to me how this works personally. Pretty amazing. So this is what a leaky gut looks like. You've got, this would be your digestive tract where you're putting donuts in here. And then the microbiome, the bugs, the bacteria are breaking down those food into particles. And those particles usually go through these tight junctions because that's the only size that those tight junctions will let in there. Does that make sense? There's a little hole that will only let a vitamin in. There's another hole that will only let a mineral in. But when you get these things blown apart from inflammation, like swollen from glyphosate or heavy metals or chemicals or drugs or stress, stress can totally blow you out. Then you get large particles leaking into your body, food intolerances occur, immune abnormalities and autoimmune conditions occur. So what's really cool is everybody's heard of autoimmune, right? Self-eating, your body's attacking itself. There's so many of them out there. Now what Dr. Longo and Dr. Asomi discovered is there's something called a white blood cell. You all heard about those, right? White blood cells do what?
Protect.
Yeah, they go around and they're specific to various things. They go around and they fight off dangerous parts of the body, dangerous bacteria or invaders. Well, autoimmune means that your body thinks that it's invading itself. These white blood cells actually get, on a calculator, it's like you held down 7. You put 4, you add 2 and 2 together and you get 11. It doesn't know any better. What that means is these white blood cells are going around and they live for a really long time and they have a very bad idea that your body is dangerous. So they start attacking your body. And as long as they're in there, you'll have a chronic autoimmune disease. If we can get rid of those bad white blood cells, then your body will, the autoimmune condition will calm down. So autophagy, guess what is attacked when you do autophagy? Those white blood cells are wiped out by your own body under moments of stress. Now, what we're talking about in our Dr. Pompa's techniques on helping people is something called a multi-therapeutic approach. And what that means is there's a lot of different things that need to occur. None of them are insurmountable to help turn your body around. And it has its various parts of it. I talked about fasting. Now I never thought I would fast. I was a meat eater, born in a people that grew their own stuff on ranches and all that kind of stuff, right? So, but fasting is not what we think it is. It's like you can start by dropping 1 meal a day. So if you just if you skip breakfast, which might seem completely foreign to you, but stick with me for a minute, and you still eat the same amount of food, but you make an eating window of about 6 to 8 hours, guess what? That digestive system gets a chance to rest. What if I did this all day long, lifting weights 24/7? And would my muscle ever get a chance to rest? Never. It would break down and basically pretty fall apart. When your digestive system is chronically putting food through it, especially some damaging food, the intestinal wall gets inflamed. All these different colitis, ulcerative colitis, Crohn's disease, all of these diseases that we get in our digestive system, and you keep putting substances through there, how the heck is it supposed to heal? It can't. So one of the things that these great scientists that are all at the top end of the science spectrum are saying, if you can start to give your body a rest for certain hours a day, your body's going to start to heal. You're going to allow those new cells to heal with new cells. So that's one of the parts of the multi-therapeutic approach, and it's very simple to do. And don't get scared of it. We may not even start somebody on that for a while. But the other one is ancient healing strategies. I don't know how to spell ancient, but I'll try. Is it that or the other way around?
Yeah.
IV40 except after C. So our ancestors, and I talked about this last night on the air, that our ancestors, they would eat a mammoth. They'd go get a mammoth, they'd eat that mammoth for about, however long a mammoth lasts, and then they would store the fat for winter. They'd also have some grains for winter. So when they were done eating the mammoth, they would eat the grains, and then by the time winter's over, they're out of food completely. So then everything starts to thaw out, and they're running around, there's nothing to eat, and that's called starvation spring. Almost every religion out there had some kind of starvation or fasting. So, and then you'd start to get the greens, and then you get the fruits and vegetables, and that cycle goes over and over and over. Well, the key to it is these microbiome that are in your gut, and there's 100 trillion of them in your gut alone, 50,000 of them in your mouth. These guys would die off under stress. So when you ate mammoth, 2/3 of those, figuratively speaking, couldn't eat mammoth meat and they'd die. You'd get good riddance. And then all of a sudden you'd be eating grain. Well, the ones that were good at digesting mammoths wasn't good at digesting grain. So those would die off and the other ones would come. So we'd get these evolution of healthy, strong, challenged for their life microbiome in our gut that were just really, that they would help us because they were strong and their immune system was strong. Right now, since World War II, we can eat what we want, when we want, wherever we want, with whoever we want, as much as we want, and our microbiome are fat and sassy. You can say, work! I'm not gonna work. Forget about it. There's no millennials here. Oh, just kidding. So, sorry.
Can you tell?
He was hiding. But that's the point. So what I want you to understand is we know what's causing these autoimmune diseases. We know why we're getting weight loss resistance. The last thing I wanted to say about reversing the diabetes is right now we're told to eat 6 meals a day. Every time we eat, we're injecting insulin into our body. So we already know that insulin is bad on our brain. It causes Alzheimer's disease. It's called hyperinsulinemia. It's called diabetes type 3, and it's causing Alzheimer's disease. So there's 2 types of fuel in our body, and this is my last point, okay? There's something called ketones, and you've probably heard the keto diet, right? And there's something called glucose, which is sugar. Glucose. You guys got that, right? Glucose. Proteins and everything but fat burns like glucose. This stuff, if you burn this stuff, it's like a smoky fireplace. EY or Y? EY. EY. Smoky fireplace with wet pine in it. That's how glucose burns. It's inflammatory. It causes all kinds of toxins to be in your body. If you had a fire burning in your house and you didn't have a chimney, you'd be in trouble, right? Now, what if you had a gas stove that burned natural gas? You don't need a chimney. Only when you're cooking something that's smoky, right? So fat burns as ketones. Your brain loves ketones. It's very clean. It's anti-inflammatory. So one of the things we do is we have you go in and out of different types of diets. Going on a ketogenic diet might work for a month, but if you don't alter it, it's going to stop working. Going on a paleo diet might work for a month, but if you don't alter it, it's going to stop working. Going on the eat right for my blood type diet, it's going to work for about a month. There's something called homeostasis. You all know that word? Maybe not. It means your body's going to just kind of settle down. It's like if you build a castle out of sand, the next day it's all flat. That's homeostasis in your body. You add some great supplements, you feel good, and then pretty soon your body's so used to it doesn't do any good anymore. So we want to teach you how to get your body into ketosis to help burn the stored toxins or the stored fat in our body, turn off this glucose machine periodically so that the inflammation in your body can go away and your body can heal. So that's what the ancient strategies are all about. That's what cellular inflammation is all about. And that's how we turn it around. And then again, the microbiome are going to help. They're affecting our DNA. They're turning on the bad genes or the good genes, the epigenetics of our body. This is a mitochondria, just so you know, that little guy inside the cell. It's the PG&E power plant. right there, and then it makes these free radicals because energy puts off exhaust. So there's a few things that we do to find out where your body's at. Number one, we know that heavy metals have come down 4 generations through our mother. We've got exposed to our own heavy metals. We've got mercury in our mouth, most of us. I mean, I had this great idea. I hated brushing my teeth when I was 5 years old. My mom said, go brush your teeth. And I was sitting with my grandma. My grandma goes, put her teeth in a jar. I go, wow, what a great solution. If I just don't brush my teeth and eat a lot of sugar, I'll be able to do what grandma did. Well, by the time I was 15, I had so much silver mercury in my mouth it was ridiculous. Plus, we used to play with it, right? Go break the toys open and play with it, put it on dimes. So I was so terribly dyslexic, I couldn't read till I was 28 years old. I was so terribly dyslexic. And that's all because of the heavy metals, right? I believe, and a few other things. So we're going to test your heavy metals, but we're not going to do a hair analysis. We're going to do a purge test where we're going to, if I had a pond in my yard and I went and scooped up some of the center of the water on a nice clear day, it's going to look pretty good and probably taste pretty good. But if I went in and mixed it all up and then tested the water, I'd probably find out what's really in there. So the way that we do an accurate heavy metal test, as accurate as it can get, is it's called a provoked test. So we have you take a substance that kind of stirs up the pond, and then we collect urine for 6 hours and send it off to a lab. And we can find out what's here. Most of us are going to have high lead, and most of us are going to have high mercury. I've seen high thallium, cadmium from people who lived around 3 Mile Island. I mean, it's amazing. And then we know what to do to start to knock the bodies, all these toxins out. We also do a test which is, it's called a meta-oxy test. And if they did this at like LabCorp, they'd probably charge $1,000 for it because it's so accurate in telling us how inflamed your cells are because it's testing free radicals. If I went out into the yard and I took my finger and did this to an old car that was sitting in the, the field and had all that paint come off on my hand, that's oxidation. That's what free radicals do to the cells. That's what inflammation does to the cells. So we have you do a urine test in the office, and we can test for how toxic your cells are or what your free radicals are. This is a terrible picture, but it's a test by a guy named Dr. Shoemaker, the leading authority on mold. Molds are the most dangerous things out there, and they're everywhere, especially in this county, because they produce something called neurotoxins, and they love to hang out with heavy metals. And then they invite parasites and bacteria and other kinds of good guys. So the best way to test for this is to do a visual test. The optic nerve is the quickest and most expedient way to test the brain. And so what Dr. Shoemaker discovered is by looking at different contrasts, we can tell how much toxins you're exposed to for biotoxins, heavy metals, and molds. And it's not a 100% perfect test, but it's a good indicator. So those are some of the things we do. We want to get, the toxic cells looking like this again so that we can feel happy. If you had a checking account, that's how much you made every week, and that's how much you had to spend every week. Anybody ever known anybody like that? That's just me. So pretty soon you're going to be at a deficit. So if your body's constantly only got this much energy and it's taking this long to get healthy, and you just happen to have a small bucket, you're going to get sick. So what we need to do is teach you how to have this much energy producing ability and only this much expenditure. Then your body, what's it going to do with this? Vacation? I hope not. Go fix the rest of the body, for crying out loud. Wait till the vacation till you're healthy. And then we go through a lot of different dietary changes. So, I talked about success and failure. I mean, if this makes sense to you, you want to act on it because you've got so much to gain and so much to lose. And I hope this made some sense to you. Carol, do you have those neurotoxic questionnaires? What we're going to offer you is the ability or the chance to fill out what's called the neurotoxic questionnaire. It's going to look through many different categories of your life throughout your life and help you discover where you potentially have been exposed to various chemicals, molds, things like that. And then we're going to test that. We'll go over that with you as a consultation. And for being here tonight, that will be at no charge. That will be something that we're gonna offer, because our goal is to help people find what they could do. There's a couple tests that we want to do. Those other tests we would charge for those, of course, because we have a little bit of cost to it, but we can give you we give it to you at a very, a good price for showing up tonight. I think Carol has the prices on that. The one thing that the heavy metal test, that one costs about $200 at the lab. But depending on the sickness of somebody, we would recommend that test or a few other tests. So I'm going to have, Carol, do you want to just give a couple success stories quickly?
Yeah, sure, and then you can pass this.
Yeah. Who doesn't have? Carol has gone through this program. She didn't want to do it. She refused to do it. Then she did it. Now she's helping me get other people to do it. So what does that tell you? Has everybody heard this?
So I'm 64 years old, and I was born in 1954. I lived 80 miles from 3 Mile Island. I was there when the accident occurred. My mother had me as a result of taking drugs to get pregnant. I happened to be vaccinated by a tainted polio vaccine. And all of this back then didn't mean anything, right? I had no, I spent my life healthy. I was a very healthy child, very healthy teenager, young adult. And then I hit about the age 55. And I just started having hormonal issues. Many of us do around that age. But nothing helped. And it was getting worse and worse. And just like Dr. McComb was saying in terms of the cell getting more and more inflamed, well, I had added to it, over the course of my college years, and I had lots of amalgam fillings and other things. But the point is, it just didn't stop, and I was put on hormone treatments, and then I got so tired I could not get out of bed, and I was diagnosed with chronic fatigue syndrome, and I literally, and it's hard to believe now, but I literally was like the people you see in the documentaries. I could barely get up in the morning, because when I got up I felt more tired than when I had gone to bed. I would spend about 2 hours a day. I would have 2 hours of time where I could be productive, and the rest of the day I spent on the couch watching television. I had to stop working full time, and I was an executive in the high-tech industry. I had to stop working. Then I was diagnosed with radiation illness. I got sick from that. It wasn't until we put the link together with the heavy metal that comes from radioactivity, and the fact that I lived near 3 Mile Island and was there when it was 80 miles from it when the accident happened, that I started to put all these together. But I didn't put all this together until I learned this information. So I was living on the East Coast. I had to retire early, quit my job, came out here. And I was a chiropractic patient, so of course I have a brother-in-law here who started giving me chiropractic treatments. And he said, well, you know anything about Dr. Pompa, blah, blah, blah. And I said, no, but I didn't want to do anything because I had been through so many doctors, so many tests. Oh, the test would read normal. It was just absolute. I used to joke that I had a psychotic body, and that was probably what I was going to have the rest of my life. But I thought, well, I saw Dr. Pompa's video on Fix the Cell and the way he draws. I said, there's something about this science that I've never heard of before, and nothing else has worked, so I'm willing to give this a try. Now, you have to understand, I ate sugar. I was a heavy gluten eater. I basically ate anything I want because I considered I was healthy, and I just really didn't. I did paleo for a while, lost about 15 pounds, and actually it was closer to 90 days, and it didn't work anymore. I tried all the different diets. But long story short, I went through the program. I changed the way I eat. I started therapeutic fasting, and I now have a very different lifestyle and different way that I eat, but it's all part of my lifestyle now. I intermittent fast. I mean, if somebody had asked me to fast 2 years ago, or even before I started the detox program, I would have laughed that that's not for me, I'm not going to do it. I've now put over 20 people through this. In fact, I had a patient in here today, and we were talking about fasting. He was, well, my body, I'm eating 6 meals a day. I don't think I could do this. Well, I've been trying it for 10 days. I got it to 14 hours. I said, that's awesome. Because most of it occurs overnight anyway, that's awesome. So, and so I'm a personal coach. I take people through the multi-therapeutic approach, we call it, the different things that we do. And I'm also what I call a cellular healing advocate, because I do similar to what Dr. McCullough does. I go out and I talk to groups of people in their homes and things to educate everybody. But the key thing here is really about if you, or like me, you've tried lots of things, you're at a point in your life where, you know, I'm ready to try something different because I've tried all the standard stuff, and you're willing to commit to something that may put you out of your comfort zone a bit, but you know, if you come out of it like I did, trust me, I dropped 16 pounds, the weight's off, I'm doing intermittent fasting. I'm eating pretty much, I even eat dark chocolate, and I'm not on any, you know, program that they advertise on TV, because I tried all those. The thing that will happen to you is you're going to learn how to do it yourself like I did. I now can diagnose myself on a daily basis. I know how many carbs I can get away with before I start gaining weight again or feeling tired, because I've learned it. And you all, this is an educational process at the same time. We're going to educate you. You will go at your own speed, your own pace. We teach you, you know, what to do. You learn how to troubleshoot, and that's nothing that we learn anyplace else. Most other places, especially anything I've ever done, they kind of will do this and do that and just do this. But and you know, there's a little bit of that in here too.
And there's also degrees. Some people might just want to be healthier. Other people have chronic diseases that they need to get handled. So we look at that as on an individual basis. And just for fun, since we were doing this, can you do the 474 thing because we got a lot of people watching? For here or anybody.
If you want to connect with, we're changing the subject. If you want to connect on Facebook, Dr. McCullough has a Facebook group called Health Rebels. So if you really enjoyed this evening and you're still in education mode and not action mode, that's totally fine, or commit mode, that's totally fine. But we have a Facebook group called Health Rebels, and if you text 474747 and type in the message field,
Heal the Cell.
Heal the Cell, all one word, Heal the Cell. You'll get an auto reply that will give you a link to the Facebook group, and you can sign up. Because Dr. McCullough's on there with Facebook Lives and tips, and he even has had some cooking shows on there, teaching me how to cook different things.
I'm sorry, that was 747?
47474747.
47, 47, 47.
Just 3 times.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, I know.
It sounds different every time.
Yeah, 47, 47.
So just
3437.
so what you do from here, if you are interested in going the next step right now, if you want to just go and kind of watch from a distance for a while, you're welcome to do that too. But if you want to set up an appointment to fill out your neurotoxic questionnaire and have a consultation with me and Carol, right now, if you want to just sign up today, we'll offer that at no charge for you. That's a pretty good deal. And we just ask that you come with a questionnaire filled out. So many times people come for their appointment and sit here and fill the questionnaire out. By the time they're done, their appointment's over. So please do that. And then we'll talk to you about those other tests. I think there's a sheet you guys got that talks about thank you. The
Health and toxicity.
Yeah, for $179 you get all of the testing, including digital spinal x-rays to look at the neurological system as well. So that's a pretty good deal. And but if you just want to do the neurotoxic first, do that. Yeah. So we'll have a sign-up sheet here for people that do want to sign up. We have a few appointments this week, I think.
And could you explain the heavy metal challenge test?
Yeah. Did Arlene leave you with a So the heavy metal challenge test is a lab. Basically, there's a substance that it's a purging substance. It's a something that's going to pull. Who asked the question anyway? You did. So it's called a provoked test, and I'm just going to do this. Turn this off. I don't want people trying this without knowing what they're doing.